Hello and welcome to the Risk and Accounting Advisory Podcast. My name is Neal Beggan. I am the leader of the Risk Advisory Group at Bekaert, and today on our podcast, we are going to be talking about a newly branded service offering and what the guys are calling SOX Lite, spelled L-I-T-E. With me today are two of my favorite practitioners in Bekaert's Risk Advisory practice, Gareth Montague-Smith and Peyton, both with a ton of experience. You've heard from them before. They have an unbelievable wealth of knowledge in the risk and control space, and I know they are both excited to share their thoughts on SOX Lite. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Talk to me a little bit, Gareth, about what is SOX Lite.
Honestly, Neal, it's not really a new service. We've been doing it for a while, but typically when we say SOX, S-O-X, a lot of private companies immediately tune out thinking it does not apply to them, which for the most part is correct. And interestingly, as a side note, though, we are seeing some states that are starting to ask companies that work for the specific state entity to have an internal control opinion as part of their standard financial statement audit, but we didn't want to address that specifically today. So our target companies or folks that we think would really benefit from SOX Lite would be the owner of a business that's maybe not super involved in the day-to-day operations, but would like some comfort that policies and procedures are in place and documented, and give them some comfort. Another target company would be a company that has material weaknesses and or significant deficiencies in their prior year financial statements, which they wish to remediate. Maybe companies that are considering a transaction, whether a sale, an IPO, for example, to give the potential buyer comfort on the operations of the about to be acquired company.
Right.
And then a couple of other ones I think would benefit from this is a company that has a difficult and or lengthy audit, really wishes to cut down the time it takes to complete the audit and or potentially manage down fees. And finally, where I think this is the biggest bang for the buck, I think that, and this would apply to both public and private companies, if you have an entity that has subsidiaries that are almost material to the parent company, and the parent company is where the audit is performed, you might want to scope in and get some comfort on certain processes at the subsidiaries. For example, maybe the inventory and revenue processes for a subsidiary that's a manufacturer.
Well, that makes sense. Peyton, I want to go to you next. In any one of the situations Gareth just described, there were numerous. How would you go about this?
Yeah, thanks, Neal. Well, first, we take the company's financial statements and then have discussions with management and really run them through our risk assessment tools, which take into consideration both qualitative and quantitative factors. So the tools we have allow us to quickly create documentation indicating the current state of an organization's controls, and to provide recommendations for improvement, very quickly. In these situations, we focus on the critical few risks of material misstatements. We encourage a simplified system of control to allow focus on control maturity and effective change management. We really don't see the point in overcomplicating or over-engineering an internal control framework.
Agreed. And I'm actually going to stay with you, Peyton, for this next question. Talk to me a little bit about what the deliverables look like coming out of a SOX Lite type of project.
Sure. So, after performing our scoping and diagnostic procedures, as I mentioned earlier, we'll create a customized risk and control matrix, which is a RACM, and generate process narratives or flow charts, whatever the company desires. And really, it's creating a personalized and actionable gap analysis and roadmap. And that's where we find, there's a lot of really value in this, is that, roadmap of gaps that need to be remediated. And again, the focus here is on the most critical processes, not necessarily all of them, but much more of a laser focused approach. And it's not one size fits all.
Agreed. Yep. Much like other formal, more large scale SOX projects that we do. It sounds like deliverables overlap considerably. So good to know. Gareth, coming back to you, any other thoughts on why this, from what I see, almost applicable to all companies, across industries too?
Yeah, that's right. This is completely agnostic. We have the flexibility to scope the key and or significant processes that are specific to the specific risk profile of the company. And if you think about a company's journey as they mature their internal control environment, This would also enable the company to almost sort of chip away at getting all their processes documented over a period of time, and they can control that pace.
So, Gareth, we heard Peyton mention, some of the deliverables with RACMs and so forth that you typically document things like walkthroughs and testing. But what about testing as it relates to SOX Lite?
Well, the best thing about the initial rollout of the initiative is it does not consider any testing. We could do that, but initially I think that would be down the road. And again, the real win here is it gives a company flexibility to achieve the coverage and or comfort they need and allow them to mature that environment over time.
Right, exactly. Kind of the tailored approach that was mentioned earlier. And in case anyone out there still isn't convinced, can you sum up kind of what you see as the benefits of performing or undergoing really a SOX Lite project?
Yeah, I mean, I think that clearly the biggest benefit is the peace of mind for a business owner. Significant risks to their financial statements will now have been documented and established. They have a starting point to evaluate where they go in overall control maturity. And again, it gives them a starting point if they were to go public, having to comply with a framework like Sarbanes-Oxley, that they have started that journey with this effort.
Absolutely. Peyton, last question is going to come to you. Any final thoughts on SOX Lite and what we've touched on today?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Gareth has said. I mean, really, it's the simplicity coupled with the impact that it, can deliver relatively swiftly. I see this as something any company could use to get their arms around certain key controls in their environment. Not only is this really useful for private companies, but even certain of our public clients use this service to support management's assessment of ICFR required under SOX 404A by just being a public company.
Right.
The other thing worth mentioning is cost, which we haven't really hit on. As SOX Lite does not contemplate testing, we can give you a quote by process. That way, if you have a tight budget, again, you can plan to roll it out over time and manage your budget accordingly. Kind of what Gareth was saying earlier. We can tailor this to your needs, to your budget, and chip away, as Gareth said, at their process, narrative, and controls build out.
Yeah, so really tailoring it obviously creates for to use pun intended, a lighter lift, which would translate to a lighter cost and less of an impact to budget. So definitely a great alternative. Well, thanks, Peyton, Gareth, for your insights. Obviously, it sounds like you guys are excited about this newly rebranded, kind of service offering and packaged into this SOX Lite. I really like the fact that it's so flexible and scalable. And in turn, I'm excited about what we're able to do for a number of clients, not just the ones publicly traded, as you mentioned. I want to thank our audience for listening. For more information on traditional SOX compliance, internal controls, or internal audit, we ask that you visit cbh.com/risk. And as always, we ask that you please like, share, and subscribe to the Risk and Accounting Advisory Podcast. Thanks so much again for listening.